Here with Benedict football head coach Ron Dickerson Jr. Coach, heading into year two, if we were to go back to January, finished up year one, you said there were admittedly things you wished had gone better. What was your mindset in January, the goals you had, and where do you think you guys are now in terms of hitting those goals?
You know, we had to do a lot of evals, and that's where we spent a lot of time on who we had to replace, where we had to upgrade mentally and physically. And so I think being that we got through the season, we were able to see where some of our deficiencies were, and my coaching staff really went out and did a great job of replacing some of those deficiencies and bringing in some really talented young men, not only on the field but off the field.
And you talked about how even midway through the season last year, you started to see the comfortability, the chemistry growing with the team. To see your players come up to the podium today with so much confidence and excitement for this year, what does that mean to you, and what does it tell you about where you guys are starting off this year compared to last?
Well, I think they understand that the standard is the standard, and they've bought into where we want to go. We talk about just get 1% better every day, and that's what you have to do. Yes, our ultimate goal is to win the conference and go into the playoffs and win all that. But if we don't have a vision for today, then we'll never succeed in the day. And so I think that understanding how the real world works and ties into football has really helped us become closer as a unit, closer as a team. The coaches, and they understand that, we're a family, but we are still the superiors, and that what we want to do is for the best interest of them. And they've bought into that. And they do a good job now of, I didn't have a team-led I didn't have a player-led team last year, and now I have a player-led team, and they still focus on, what direction we want to go, but it's more of a player-led team.
You talked or heard them talk about for the offense, the size and the speed. The defense, they said they're ready to make plays. What do you see as the strength on both sides?
Again, they're playing together. Last year we had a lot of eyes, and this year, we don't have any eyes. And, those that wanted to be an eye player, they've kind of, found their way off the program and out of the program and off the team. And that's, again, the player-led part of the growth. And so I really think the chemistry, and the one thing when I've been on successful teams, and, I got two coaches that have played in or coached in the NCAA national championships. And so for them to bring that back into really strive on competition, and as you heard them say, last year I only had a first guy. This year we have threes, that actually can compete. So if you take a lazy step, you may be number three instead of being number one. And I think that's where the camaraderie and the togetherness has come, is that you always have to bring your A game, because if you don't, the offense will expose you, the defense will expose you, and probably the guy that's behind you that's stepping on your heels will take your job.
And you told us today that you are living out that we from the top down. You said you're going back to school to get a master's degree because you wanted to show these guys that if you're asking them to do school and do football, you're going to do it too. Why did you want to do that?
Because, again, at some point in time, if I have to change my career, I want to make sure I'm at the highest level. And that's what I tell them, is that put yourself in a situation where nobody can tell you no. And so, I'm not in that, but if I speak it, I got to show it. And so, in that, football ends. You go in my room and they see it, that I was blessed to play with the Chiefs and, go on and play for a little while, but it ended for me. And so, again, if I'm going to really strive on get your academics, get as much as you can academically, because when it ends, you have to have something to fall back on, then I think that they should see it from the head down. If I'm asking them to go out there and make tackles and make catches, they know that I did it at the University of Arkansas and in the NFL. But now to sit there and say, go as far as you can academically, they can look at Coach Dickerson and say, well, hey, again, if the ball-headed guy's doing it, then, we can push it too into that. And so it's just a great opportunity to, again, lead by example.
Talk about the we. Family is written on the wall here in front of us. The Booster Club was here today. Alumni was here. How does the chemistry and what you guys are building in terms of togetherness just embody what it means to be a part of the Benedict community?
It's family is very unique. You understand what I'm saying? And I was raised on family. And I know, you hear a lot of them, people say, well, you got to do this and you got to do that. You do, but for a good old Southern family like I grew up in, we had uncles that we didn't know. And yet they came to the family reunion, and you got to know them, whether it was over you both grabbing the same piece of chicken, or whether you were playing dominoes, or whether you went out there and sat under a shade tree and heard his stories. And at that point in time, you went from not knowing this uncle to learning stuff from that uncle. And so when, and I still use this, gumbo is really good, but the good gumbo, you do not know what's in it. And it may be a little bit of this and a little bit of that. I just turn that into the family aspect. We have a whole bunch of people from all over the country, coaches, we have blacks, we have whites, we have everything, high economic, low economic, single parent, double parents, high education. We have them all over. But yet to be successful, if I can learn a little from you and you can learn a little from me, and if I'm from Detroit, but yet I end up in Miami because you're there and I never would have had the opportunity, that's building a family. And so, that's why we strive on that. It's love at the end of family. You understand what I'm saying? And you have to have, as some of my players talked about, in family with the image, it's mental health. And so playing this sport is a very violent and hard, demanding sport. And sometimes you have to lean on, and that's where the family comes. It comes from the players. Because sometimes they don't want to come and talk to me at that moment, but the other player puts his arm and say, man, it's going to be okay. Coach D's that way. Coach Clayton's that way. Coach Campbell's that way. But that's how families work, and sometimes you got to tell them when they don't want to hear, the hard truth. But again, if you have that bond and you have that, at the end of the journey for them, they know they can look back and you have their back. And that's how I was raised with family.
Coach, your final message of why fans should come out and spend time with you guys on Saturdays.
These young men are special, and if you see them today, you will notice that. We're going to play great football. Benedict has a tradition off the field, but also on the field, and we are blessed to try to take that baton and to reignite that fire to have great football. And this is a mecca. There's some great programs around here, and we want to be in that standard of great programs.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Coach. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.